But just because it says pack fresh, it doesn't mean you're going to be getting a 10 on that card, all right? Before you buy your ungraded cards, ask yourself, who am I planning on sending these cards to for grading, okay? And that equals the cost that you should be paying for that card ungraded. You know, when I was buying it, I had no idea what Prism even was. Now ask yourself, if they sell graded cards, why didn't they get this particular card graded? Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Powers Sports Memorabilia Show. I'm your host, Matt Powers. Thank you again for joining me. Please visit the website, powersportsmemorabilia.com. Also, give me a follow over there on Instagram, @PowersAutographs. Well, you are brand new into the sports card hobby and hearing about everyone sending off their cards for grading. You see them getting all these 10s and making huge sales because of it. And you're thinking to yourself, hey, I can do that. But you're scared to get started. What if you make a mistake? What are some things you should be looking for? Things to avoid doing? Today I will share with you 10 things I have learned in buying ungraded sports cards over the last 2 years. Now, we've all made a ton of mistakes buying ungraded cards with the hopes of sending them off for grading and getting a 10. How many of us have bought a card that we were sure was going to get a 10, but then when you finally got it in person, it looked like somebody cut up some cucumbers on it, just scratches everywhere. Now, even if we follow these 10 steps, it doesn't guarantee us for getting a 10. However, it does limit the amount of money and time we waste buying cards that never had a shot at getting a 10 in the first place. So what are some things we should try to avoid when buying ungraded sports cards? Let's take a look at 10 of them. All right, number 10, buying cards that are off-center. Now, how many times have you bought a card knowing damn well that card was off-center, and you said to yourself, well, maybe the surface, corners, and edges will get a 10, kind of drowning out the 9 the centering will get for you. For me, all the time, not as much anymore because I know the importance of centering, but I was doing that all the time, just buying cards that were just slightly off-centered. Perfect centering contributes to the eye appeal of a card, okay? The more eye appeal a card has, the better chance of getting a good grade. So set yourself up for success and buy cards that are well centered. Now, this doesn't apply to every card, right? For example, picking up a Michael Jordan 1986 Fleer that is off-centered at a good price is generally a good idea, okay? Those cards have a ton of value. But for modern cards, it definitely does apply. You always want to be buying modern cards that are centered really well. And I would suggest buying cards that have borders on the sides. That way you can easily tell if the card is centered. And number 9, buying cards with dark borders. All right, dark borders such as black and blue or red can easily show chipping on the edges, which will contribute to a lower score on your edges, all right? White borders sort of hide those imperfections at times. So if you're new to buying ungraded cards, I would definitely suggest sticking to cards with white borders. All right, number 8, buying older chrome cards. And I'm talking about ones that are generally about 5 years or older. I've almost never had any success buying older chrome cards for grading. I remember I bought a box one time of 2006 Bowman Chrome, I think, and I opened up every single pack, and I swear 90% of those cards had scratches in them. They hadn't even gotten out of the packaging, and they were already scratched up. It just seems like these chrome cards always have surface issues. Generally, the scratches and dings and dents. But, generally speaking, these cards have probably been handled a few dozen times. They've probably been shipped 4 or 5 times. So the chances of them getting a 10 are very, very slim. Now, I'm not saying it can't happen, as I have seen it happen with other people, just not with me. All right, so always be careful buying older chrome cards. And number 7, speaking of pack fresh, you often see this in the item title or description on eBay, and you may be assuming, hey, maybe that card is in mint condition. Well, again, we've all seen this on eBay, and if you open up any number of packs, you know that most cards that come out of them aren't in any condition to be graded, especially like the stuff I just mentioned, the chrome and even prism to a certain extent. It can vary widely from set to set, so make sure you do your homework on that set. But just because it says pack fresh, it doesn't mean you're going to be getting a 10 on that card, all right? And this also goes for if you see in the title and description, PSA 10 question mark. People just put that in the title so it pops up in search results, okay? It doesn't mean anything in relation to the actual condition of the card. All right, number 6, buying off COMC. COMC stands for checkoutmycards.com. Let me first start off by saying that I have nothing against COMC. They provide an excellent service, a very easy way to buy and sell ungraded cards. And they also, offer graded cards as well. A little slow on the shipping, but it's always fun to watch their Instagram feed and just see people complaining about their shipping times. They seem to be a couple months behind right now. They've just been flooded with orders. But buying ungraded cards on COMC can be hit or miss. People like me send their cards to COMC that they don't want to get graded. Now, in most cases, it's because the card has some sort of issue with it. However, some people don't grade cards, and they do send quality ones to COMC, or they send cards of people that aren't currently stars but end up being them, and the cards are already sitting there at COMC ready to be bought by others. So if you're looking at a player that potentially wasn't a star a couple years ago and then all of a sudden is becoming a star now, those cards might actually have a decent chance at grading well, just simply because people weren't getting these cards graded a couple years ago. So it is hit or miss, all right? My advice, don't buy something from COMC and expect it to get a 10. Assume a 9. And don't buy anything that is going to break your bank, all right? If you get the card and it's a piece of junk, it doesn't ruin your day or your finances. Now, again, I'm not saying you can't find 10s on COMC, but just know that it is not likely. All right, number 5, not knowing what grading company you are using before you buy the cards. With PSA currently being shut down, there are a bunch of other grading card companies out there that people have been sending their cards to. I've talked about them on this show, SGC, CSG, HGA, for example. Before you buy your ungraded cards, ask yourself, who am I planning on sending these cards to for grading? Okay, why does that matter? Well, buying cards with green colors in the design might look good in a CSG slab. Ones that are black and white might look good in an SGC slab. Now, having an understanding of where you plan on sending them will affect what you are willing to pay for that card. All right, number 4, this leads me to my next tip: know your numbers. If you're planning on selling these cards once you get them graded, you need to know a couple things, all right? Now, what is the likelihood of this card getting a 10? For example, 1,000 have been graded, but only 100 have been 10s. It's probably not likely you're going to be getting a 10 on that card, all right? Now, what do they sell for once graded? What is the grading company you are choosing charged to grade this card? Now, take the sales price, all right, minus the grading cost, minus any selling fees, and then deduct the percentage of profit that you want to make, and that equals the cost that you should be paying for that card ungraded. Now, the more you know your numbers, the more confident you will feel about your purchase. All right, number 3, buying expensive cards ungraded. Now, don't get me wrong. This can be a very lucrative position to take if you are buying the right card in the right condition. But for new people just getting into the hobby, I wouldn't suggest doing this, right? I would rather have you make a $2 or $5 or $10 mistake rather than a $200, $500, or $1,000 mistake, all right? It takes a bit of time to build up some financial funds, but also to understand what the market actually wants and what they are willing to pay for that card once graded. I remember the first card I got into buying was Zion Williamson's 2018 Prism, card number 248. I'm sure everybody's familiar with that card. When I was buying it, I had no idea what Prism even was. I just heard people talking about these cards in Facebook groups here. And here are these cards were at $200 or so, and I was just buying as many as I could. I was just looking at the centering. Now, fortunately, I was able to get mostly 10s, but I could afford the $200 hit should I get a 9 or even worse. So just make sure that you can absolutely afford that card ungraded in the price that you are paying for it, and it doesn't absolutely crush your budget. All right, number 2, speaking of expensive cards, if you do buy cards that you deem expensive, ask questions. Absolutely do this. Always do your homework. Don't be afraid to ask the seller a question. Hey, how's the surface look in person? Are there any print lines? Any scratches that you can see? If they ignore you, then chances are there are probably problems with that card and you just avoided a big mistake. But most people reply back, and I have found that most to be pretty honest about the condition of the card. Now, I wouldn't be doing this for $1 and $2 cards. Okay, please don't waste somebody's time, with a card of that value. But if the card is a big chunk of your budget and what you deem to be expensive, then don't be afraid to ask questions about the condition of the card. And number 1, try and avoid buying ungraded cards from an eBay seller that also sells graded cards. Now ask yourself, if they sell graded cards, why didn't they get this particular card graded? Now, it could be they just haven't had a chance to get to it, or PSA is closed down and they don't want to send it, or the player, blew up and he wasn't worth getting graded before, and now he's, a big superstar. There are lots of things that can contribute about, why it isn't graded. It could also be because the card's a POS, all right? And it wouldn't probably get an 8, probably be a 7 or something like that, right? Now, this is where asking questions comes in and leaning on the experience that you have gained in the hobby. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. There are probably more than 10 tips I could put on this list, but I got to keep these videos short, ain't nobody got time to sit around and watch an hour-long video, so try to keep these things brief for you guys there. But comment below. Let me know if you've made any of these mistakes when new. Are there any mistakes that I left off this list that you think are important? And again, thanks again for watching. Always appreciate it. And if you like these sort of videos, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Definitely always appreciate it. And be sure to check out the website, powersportsmemorabilia.com. Give me a follow over there on Instagram, @PowersAutographs. And I will see you on the next episode.